welcome to another episode of Around the Piano. And we're glad to have you here today. We want to make sure everybody remembers to smile, be kind, and keep on keeping on. And our first guest up today is a good friend from out California way, Beth Ann Hilton. Hello, Beth. How are you today?
I'm excellent, Tim. I'm looking forward to a great summer. How about you?
Yeah, same here. We've got it's kind of March weather here in the month of May. At the time we're recording this, but we'll see what it's like this summer, as long as it doesn't get too warm. But we love the California weather. That's why we go out there to the NAMM show every January, because January in Chicago is just not a lot of fun. So,
well, lucky you. I'll see you there.
Yeah. We'll do that. But hey, we're going to be talking with Ann Sweeten in just a couple minutes. And I know, tell us a little about what you know about Ann, because you know her very well. And I know you are reviewing her latest album, which is out now. So give us a little background on Ann Sweeten.
Yeah, absolutely. Ann is one of the most prolific and excellent composers of our time. And I don't think she really gets recognized for such. She's not someone that rushes out her work. She is extremely thoughtful about her albums. And now she has a new album, her 17th, and it's called Still. And here it is. I have a copy because we are reviewing it right now for Contemporary Fusion Reviews, and that should be up very shortly. I love that she is still making CDs. This is gorgeous. And it's a bit of a family affair. Her husband is a wonderful photographer, and he shoots everything for her albums. So nature photography, based mostly in northeastern US. And it's just an album that is very rich in its composition, its execution, and is a performer at heart. I hope you guys talk about that today. And she is technically excellent as well. And she has 10 very generous and well-produced tracks. She produces at Imaginary Road Studios in Vermont, which is the Will Ackerman, founder of Windham Hill, and his whole stable of people. And this year, with this album, she even brought in some really wonderful talent with Richard Sebring of the Boston Symphony Orchestra. So that was new and an excellent addition. So what I love about her albums also is the richness that's within the liner notes. Ann writes poetry. She's really a Renaissance woman. So when you explore this, you go through the poetry, you go through the stories behind the music, and there's just so much to write about. And so I hope you'll enjoy what we come up with.
Excellent. So hold up that album again and hold it closer to the screen if you can. Mm-hmm. And what's the title of the album? Still, correct?
Still. Mm-hmm. And then here's the booklet. And then, yeah.
Very nice.
I'm sure you can have one. We would send one to you.
Could we have one? That would be awesome, because we will play. We've got here in the studio, we play music all the time whenever anybody's here. We'd love to put that in the rotation and have that up there. In fact, we would look at, we've got our own music radio station that we are launching. So we'd love to maybe have Ann's music.
Oh, that's great news. Congrats.
So that would be excellent. Well, we're looking forward to that. And we're looking forward to, we may not see you for months ahead, but we're looking forward to seeing you at the NAMM show in January. And hopefully we'll chat before then. But thank you for being with us.
Absolutely. Ben. Always great to be here. And you can get the review at contemporaryfusionreviews.com. Enjoy.
Fantastic. All right. Thanks, Beth.
You're welcome. Thanks, Tim.
You bet. Well, Deke, what do you think? I think this is could be exciting here in a few minutes. What do you think?
I think it's incredible. And started playing piano like when she was like 5 or 6.
Pretty cool, huh?
And had just an incredible training. Excuse me, chokes me right up. How good she is, and it's one of those sounds. And I haven't listened to Still yet. It dropped last week, but she's got one of those sounds that just relaxes you.
It really does.
Just amazing on what she does and how she can do it. And even spend a little time lead singing for Fallout, a pop band back in the day, back in our day, I guess.
Back in our day, yeah.
That's it. And I'm excited to have her here. A Steinway artist. Come on. Amazing. Amazing.
It is amazing. Well, let's bring Ann aboard here and let's see how she's doing. Hello, Ann, and welcome to Around the Piano.
Hi, Tim. Happy to be here.
That's fantastic. I tell you, we are excited to have you here today. And as Deke said, we're always happy to have Steinway artists around because we've got a few Steinways down in our warehouse, which is sitting below our studio space here. And so you're welcome. You ever come to Chicago? We've got a couple of 9-foot Steinway concerts sitting in our warehouse that go out for concerts in the Chicago area. You're welcome to come in and tickle our ivories anytime.
Lovely.
Yeah. So tell us let's start right off the bat. Let's start from the brand new album is out and it's called Still.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us what the album is all about. And I know that I also want to hear about the poetry that you write, that you include on the album and the liner notes. And your husband does all the artwork, we understand.
Yes, he's our visual director. He's a professional photographer and his work is just stunning. And we work together. I write the music and then the liner notes, and I share them with him. Of course, he's there while I'm composing all this. And then he kind of goes through his catalog and chooses what he feels embraces what I'm trying to communicate. And if he doesn't find it, he goes out and shoots it. Nice. So it's really quite the collaborative effort.
Well, that's fantastic. Now, what's your husband's name? Let's give him a little credit there.
It's Randy Yoder, Yoder.
All right, that's fantastic. Now, you've been a part of, you recorded for Windham Hill. Is that correct?
Windham Hill, Will Ackerman founded Windham Hill, but he sold it and opened a new studio in Vermont. I believe it was... Well, I know it was Imaginary Road Studios, but I'm trying to remember the date he opened it, the year. I think it was, I want to say 96. Don't hold me that. But once he moved there, I met him in 2006. And I've been going there ever since because it's just not only, you have just such great pros to work with. Will's great, but it's such a beautiful setting. I mean, he's in pastoral Vermont, the piano overlooks a big mountain. So when you're playing, you see it, when you're recording, it's just a beautiful space, in which to get it all down perfectly,
Well, that's amazing. That sounds like a wonderful place to do some recording.
It is. I don't want to go anywhere else.
Exactly. So what inspired this album Still?
Well, it's interesting because I was saying to another show host the other day that I don't write with a particular goal, this is going to be about this, or I want to achieve that. It's just, I write from my heart and my soul, and it flows out as life events. I sit down and something will come to me and I'll play around with it for a little bit. And maybe I've got something, maybe I've got a couple of measures and I'm like, well, nothing else is coming. And then I'll revisit it, or it'll all come out in one afternoon. But and I'm always composing. In fact, I have 6 new pieces for another upcoming album, which I'll be recording back at Imaginary Road in November. But I just write as I feel it, just chapters of my life. And with this album, I had written 9 of the pieces, and I had never really gotten to the point where I'm basically at the end of what will be what I feel is the album, and I didn't have a title. And it was just like, I can't think of a title for this. I'm lost. And one evening, I was getting ready to go out to dinner, and I was sitting in my kitchen. It was very quiet, very still. And I was just reflecting, and it just came to me. It was just like, it's so still in here, which is rare because we have 3 dogs, and they were upstairs in the bedroom with the AC on. So it was uncharacteristically quiet. And that title that's it. That's it. And then all the pieces, all the titles I had just miraculously fit in that umbrella, under that umbrella of still. The only thing missing was that I had to write still. And so I set myself to writing another piece and naming it Still, and it sounded quite different. And my husband actually said, that doesn't sound like anything you have ever, created before. And I said, yeah, I know. Isn't it great? It's perfect, isn't it? And he goes, yeah. And so that became the title track, and it finished the album. And I just called Imaginary Road and said, okay, I need a recording date.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I love when things happen for musicians where it comes naturally. It's not a forced thing where you sit down, I have to do this song because my whoever needs it by a certain date.
I will never do that. I mean, it has to come organically. Yeah. You force things. I you don't get the same result.
Right. You really don't. Well, here comes the big question. Based on what you said so far, what kind of dogs do you have?
Favorite topic of mine. Yeah. Well, they're all rescues. One is a Siberian Husky. Another is a little terrier border collie mix, we think. And then another one looks exactly like a Basenji without the, squiggly tail.
Curly tail.
And she's from Guatemala. So the 3 of them, the 3 girls, and they get along pretty well. Occasionally there's a little snarkiness, but I'm alpha, so I just say, cut it out.
That's awesome. We have my wife and I have a collie at home with a cat, and it took the cat 3 years to get used to Emma being around, and now you can't separate them.
Oh, that's great. I love when I see stuff like that. Yeah. Opposites being best buddies.
Exactly. Yeah, which is cool. So yeah, I would find that fascinating that you've got that has to help. I think help with your writing as well, just to have them there. Like you mentioned, they were up there being quiet. They knew Mama had to work on her music, and
they knew no such thing. The AC and the TV were going very loudly for them because I try to keep them. I like to keep them quiet when we're going out to dinner. Sure. And so if they have the TV on, they can, they're not getting all nervous by what they hear outside, and the AC is keeping them cool. But they're dear, and I love them so much. They love to lie under my piano when I am composing. They just pass out. It's just one's under the bench, one's under the piano, and one's alongside.
Which is so neat, and it's as you say that. Our Emma does the same thing. She's a collie, and same thing. She works with my wife, not as really a therapy dog, but she's there when all of her students come in, and she knows the students. She'll bring them in, and she's very protective of them. But same thing when we go off to dinner or something, we leave the TV on. She likes to watch the Food Channel for some reason. So
for some reason, I wonder.
Exactly. So yeah, so that's fun. So going back. How did you get started in this business? Obviously, we know you started playing piano at 5 or 6 years of age. So how did that all evolve to where you are today?
Well, it's an interesting story. I it's a little different than what you mentioned. I actually started playing the Hammond organ at age 6.
Okay.
But how that evolved is a very interesting story. I had been over visiting my cousin, and she had a little toy keyboard, about maybe a foot long. And I was maybe 5.5. And I was absolutely fascinated by this thing. I was pressing the keys and they were making noise, and this is cool. And of course, I loved music even as a toddler, 3 and 4, because I was always dancing, to the stereo that my mother played. So when I got back home, I asked my mother if maybe could I have a little toy keyboard. And my mother was always looking for anything I might have an interest in that she would support and help develop. And so when she heard keyboard, she thought big. And so this was probably a few months before Christmas time. And the morning that I was 6 then, and my 6th Christmas, and I walked into our den, and right next to the Christmas tree was a big Hammond organ, way bigger than me. And I was overwhelmed because, I was expecting maybe I'd get a little, toy keyboard for Christmas. So this thing was just fascinating. And, back then they had these little inserts that you would put on the keys to ID them. Right. I had no idea what they were. And they had little books that you could follow with the things. So I started playing that day, but I couldn't reach the pedals because I was little. So I stood the first year, and my mother got me teachers and all of that. And, I probably did that for 3 years, finally could reach the pedals. And then my teacher at that point said to my mother, well, if you want her to develop technically, you absolutely need to get her acoustic piano. Right. And, to really develop the hands and the technique. And so for my 9th Christmas, I got a Baldwin piano.
There you go.
And there you go. And study continued with a different teacher. She found me Russian-born concert pianist David Sokolov. And the rest is history.
That's it must have been a good kid. That's a heck of a thing to bring down the chimney.
Right.
Yeah, well, I think she made a deal with Santa, maybe open the door for him.
Right.
It's all magic.
It's all magic. That is.
But I find that fascinating because I grew up in a house with, we had 5 pianos and 2 organs, and they were Hammonds. And I've owned a few Hammond organs over time. I used to be a ballpark organist, so I love going back and forth between the organ and the piano. But they are what a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people say, well, they're both keyboard instruments, so they're the same. If you can play one, you can play the other. But they're 2 entirely different instruments.
Oh, completely.
Completely. The technique is different from one to the other. And it's I always remember learning on the organ. It was heel toe to get started there. And
well, I certainly enjoyed the organ, and I even played a church organ, which was like, they're just with the pipes and everything. And oh my God, it was so just chilling, But the piano is my love. I mean, you can get, the tiniest of sound, and then just this huge build, and you don't have any of that with an organ. I just love the range of dynamics that the instrument provides, the tonalities, how the piano rings out. And it is a magical instrument. Very different.
Well, it truly is. And when you mention that, it's the only instrument where you're not controlled by turning a volume up or down. It's totally on you, the player, for the technique and the dynamics within it. And that's a lot to learn. That's what kids need to learn as they're growing up and they advance with piano. Because you're exactly right. You can put the smallest little nuances, and depending on where on the keyboard you're at, it changes. And how you play with your dynamics and your technique makes all the difference in the world. You can play this, two people can play the exact same piece right behind each other. It's going to be two different interpretations, no doubt.
Oh, absolutely. Well, first of all, they're two different people, but they're probably two different techniques, two different emotions, two different passions, two different musicalities.
Right. Yeah.
So
it's fascinating.
So, Ann, I'm fascinated with your process. Still, which dropped last week, your new album is your 17th, but you've written over 200 scores.
Almost.
So, well, so with that, is there any song that made Still that was left off, maybe, album number 10 or something? And does that tend to drive you crazy that you may have one that didn't fit and it's just kind of there, not finished yet?
No, actually, most times, what I'm writing, I get to a certain point and I'm feeling like, oh, this feels like a good body of work. They're all flowing from one to the other. And, then as I explained with Still, I mean, I just needed that one song to complete it. And it just magically brought it all together. Because I write from my heart and what's going on with me in my life, the songs are, symbolic of that. So, if I'm having each song is a page in a chapter, if you will,
Sure.
and so they flow naturally into them. So nothing really falls off an album where I decide that, no, that doesn't quite fit. Certainly not in recent history. Maybe in the very beginning when I started out, I had written so many songs and I was like, well, this one needs a flute and I can't find a flute player, so that one's not going on. That would be one example, but it rarely ever happens.
That's amazing to me. It's just amazing.
It's the musical aspect of how a piece comes together and becomes intertwined with your emotions, and you get the feeling out. That's what I was trying to say, and it comes out through your music, and you can definitely hear that in the music that we've listened to that you've composed. It definitely comes through. And now after talking to you for just a little bit, I can see where that music came from. And I think people are going to enjoy, after watching this podcast, listening to some of your music, which we will include at the conclusion of our chat here. We'll play some of your music as part of the podcast, but it is fascinating. Now, I've got a couple of things in your history. Also, you've got quite a diverse musical background, because I see I've got friends who have played on cruise ships and resorts, and I see you've done the cruise ship.
Well, I did a sort of a cabaret thing on cruise ships.
Okay.
And I've done some cabaret clubs doing essentially Broadway song and my playing. But I've also had a complete musical theater career with Actors Equity, and had a number of starring roles. And when I was much younger, was in the ballets, and even fronted a rock band. So I've kind of hit the gamut in even sang opera. So yeah, but they all appeal to parts of me, aspects of myself. I can embrace the classics, and yet I can get on a stage and rock out, maybe
Right.
not today, but I had the spiked hair, the whole thing, the tight black pants and boots, and I had a ball.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Everything seems to come full cycle when we talk with people that have this diverse musical backgrounds and careers, and you definitely have that. So it's fascinating, and to let people know about that, because now your music I find it very soothing, and it's very relaxing listening to your music, and it's something. And then to think that this also is a person who did Broadway, and the rock and roll, as you mentioned. Now, and then you fronted a band. What was that? Fallout. Is that
Yes.
correct? Yes.
Hmm.
When was that time period?
It's the 80s.
In the 80s? Okay. Yeah.
Everything was in the 80s.
Everything was in the 80s back then.
Well, you know, I think that because I have had my hands in so many different types of music,
Yes.
all of that has come together to influence my compositional style.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, lots of musical theater, so my pieces are very lyrical. You know, they are very melodic, because in my head I've always got some kind of lyric or some portion of a poem, you know, that sings throughout the music. And of course, my classical training, all those beautiful composers for the ballets, the Russian composers. Oh my God. And, you know, and then a little pop music here and there from rock and even folk and certainly new age, but they've all come together to create like a big recipe for the soup that is my composition.
Yeah, they kind of all fuse together to create something maybe just a little bit different. That's all Ann Sweeten. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one question we like to ask all of our guests is, what advice would you give young people getting into the business, especially coming from you with such a diverse background in the music industry? What advice would you give a young person trying to make their way through?
Well, I have a question first. Are we talking about a young person who is still in training and trying to hone their craft? Or are we talking about someone who is, you know, they've got the chops, but they don't know how to open the door?
How about we answer both?
Well,
let's look at it first from somebody who still needs some training, but is in the process of trying to get ready for a career. They know that's what they want to do. Whatever the instrument or musical endeavor they have.
That's easy. You say the cliche first, practice, practice, practice. But after that, just to believe in yourself, to and never sell yourself short. I mean, I've always felt that the best way to compete is to compete with yourself, to be the best you can be. And obviously, you know, follow your teacher if your teacher is worthy to be followed. Sometimes you have to get a different teacher. My mother found me the best teacher, and he made me, you know, technically, and just encouraged my musicality so much. And that is so important for musicians, to embrace their musicality, because that can't be taught. It has to come from within. And so I would definitely encourage them to listen to, you know, what's going on inside, and to keep working. So yes, that would answer that question. And as far as opening the door, I mean, it's hard. It's extremely hard. When I started, it was the brick and mortars and the big labels. And you know, in fact, when I met my second husband, who was at the time we were dating, I was actually out on Block Island in an acting contract. And we were dating, and we went to this hotel where they had a piano, and it was probably was a weekday, like a Monday or something. The place was empty. So I sat down and I started playing, and he said, "Oh, what is that? That's beautiful." And I said, "Oh, it's just composition of the moment." And he said, No. What do you mean?" And I said, "Just what I said." And he said, "What? I like that better than most of the stuff I listen to in that genre." He said, "You should record that." He said, "Do you have any more of that?" And I said, "Yeah, I got quite a bit at home, but, you know," I said, "I'm an actress. I don't know how to do that. Besides, I don't even have a business degree. I wouldn't know the first thing about trying to get this out." And you know that movie, Field of Dreams?
Sure.
If you build it, they will come. And so I recorded it. Took me a couple years to find a studio that I felt comfortable with, that got me. And it started. And I started literally going to Borders Books and Music, and I would play in-house. And I went to probably 6 or 7 of the branches, went to Sam Goody's Tower, and just shopped it. And they would take it and they'd put it on their listening posts as a trial. And they couldn't keep them on there. And, Borders saw this as, a really positive percentage for the number of stores I was in. And then they brought me on and on my 3rd album, they were bringing me onto the listening posts and everything. And, that's how it all began. Sure. Then, of course, we went from the physical CD, the loss of the brick and mortars, to digital, and then to downloads and streaming. And the whole industry is flipped, head over teacups. In many ways, I think it's, for musicians, it could be a little easier because everybody is out there now on the internet. But at the same time, I think it's harder because it's harder to get recognized. And I mean, I was before music went that streaming way and the digital way, I had already a good following of people were buying the physical CDs. I'd been around a while. Sure. And so I think it was easier to transition that way because of that. So it's a very, very different world. And there's a lot of aspects of what's happened in the industry that I don't think are good. But, there are a lot of positives. So I think it's trial and error is probably the best thing I could say.
Yeah, it really is. And I think the one thing that transcends from one generation to another and how the music industry has changed and how it operates from back when to now is perseverance. Whenever you started out, if you really want to do this, if you stick with it and never give up, that's the only way you're going to make it. Once you give up and lose that, it's over at that point. You're not going to make it. It's time to move on to a different career at that point. But if you really want to do it, just keep on and keep on. And don't let people tell you no.
Well, you have to believe in yourself.
You do.
And, I had a good support network as well. But,
yeah,
I did a lot of work, a lot of work.
That's obvious. Yes, for sure.
And if you want to learn more about her work, right up there on the screen, you can go to AnnSweeten.com. Right there. This is still her new album that just dropped last week. Tells you a little bit about it, but it also you can scroll through it. You can get all of her music right here online for her, and all of her other 16 albums, which are fantastic. So if you want to learn more about Ann and or check out her music, go to AnnSweeten.com.
It's perfect. So that's still the place to go.
Hey.
Pun intended.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Well, Ann, this has been wonderful having you as our guest today. We hope to do this again with you in the future and keep us abreast of everything going on. We'll look forward to getting a copy of that CD and would love to talk to you and Beth about getting it on our radio network at some point as well.
That'd be great.
So that'd be fantastic. So is there anything else that you'd like us, that you'd want your fans to know about you before we sign off today?
Well, there's lots of levels to my life and whatnot. There's a lot on the website. And, there's interviews out there that, cover all different aspects of me. But I think we're good.
That's awesome. Well, and the best place for people to reach out to you would be to go straight through your website at AnnSweeten.com.
Yes, and if they wanted to, I always encourage people to email me directly. I while I'm on social media, I don't particularly like to get too personal on social media.
Yeah.
So if people want to share stories with me, which people have through the years, some of them are just incredibly heartbreaking, heart-wrenching things that they have shared with me because of my music. I tell them to write me at ann@annsweeten.com. That way we can, go back and forth with more personal responses that aren't appropriate for other eyes.
Is there a story that comes to mind, obviously without mentioning names, that touched your heart, where your music reached out to somebody and made a difference?
Yes. I hope I can get through it without, breaking down. But a gentleman contacted me with a story in an email, probably about that long. And I'll give you the nuts and bolts of it. He started out by saying how beautiful the music was and how touching he felt it was. But he and his wife had conceived, and they had a little boy, in her womb. And they found out it was an ectopic pregnancy, and they couldn't save him. Mm-hmm. And the little boy, they had named the little boy and everything. It was just, And when they couldn't keep the baby any longer, I guess they were hoping for a miracle. They put headphones on her belly and they listened to ashes and said goodbye.
Oh.
So it was pretty intense.
Yeah. Well, you make a difference in this world, obviously, and you made a difference for that family. It obviously was an extremely rough time for that family to go through, but
yeah,
you made it possible for them to get through it, though, and that's important. That's something to remember, and to know that you were there for them when they needed you most.
Yeah,
your music was there.
But it's it's as sad as that is, it's so rewarding to know that my music is touching people, helping people cope,
absolutely,
to find hope, to find a bright spot in a very dark place.
Exactly right. Exactly. No, if everybody could, help do that, the world would be a better place, because there's no doubt about it. We all go through rough times, and some families go through rougher times than others. But when people are there to support people going through those times, it just makes it, everybody's doing God's work that way. People are just there for other people, and you've done that for them. So that's important to remember. But thank you for sharing that story. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I didn't make it through as I thought I probably would.
You did just fine.
That's it.
Well, I'll tell you what, we definitely want to get together again. You obviously have many more stories that we could probably share and talk about. So we'd love to get together with you again down the road, and hopefully we'll meet in person sometime, and we'll get to hear you play in person. That would be wonderful. But I want everybody to sit back, because in just a minute here, we're going to be listening to Ann Sweeten, and you'll see some of her performances here at the end of our podcast. So I want everybody out there, smile, be kind, keep on keeping on. And thank you, Ann Sweeten. And we want to thank Beth Ann Hilton for being with us at the beginning of the show. And I think that's it, Deke. Brought to you by Piano Trends Music Company in Crystal Lake, Illinois, pianotrends.com.
Yep. And now, some Ann Sweeten.